I cannot be the only person who noted the not so coincidental confluence of events yesterday as the world acknowledged the socialist rooted elevation of working women and labor rights fought by those women that's been watered down, at least in the US, to be a generic kind of hashtag girl boss moment, while the world was also transfixed to their television or computer screens, listening to and watching wealthy American actress Meghan Markle recount to even wealthier American TV personality Oprah Winfrey the hateful racist treatment Markle received from the British royal family after marrying Prince Harry. I know you didn't think I was going there, did you? But I thought this was a really interesting situation. Now, like I said when they got married, Meghan marrying into the British royal family was not a come-up for the sisters that I heard far too many Black women in the U.S. claim. And it was weird that people believed that it was, but I understood that this was only because people do not understand the nature of colonialism and that the royal family are colonialists. They are the head of the British Empire, whose motto used to be, quote, "the sun never sets on the British Empire," end quote, because the countries they colonized stretched around the world. In fact, there have only been 22 countries in the world that the British had not invaded and plundered. That means that those people, that family, has had a hand in subjugating the people and stealing the resources and getting rich off of both in at least 180 countries around the world. All those artifacts in the British Museum are really evidence of grand global theft that need to be returned to the people they were stolen from, as well as all the money the royal family lives off of, in addition to the taxes paid by the British people. Look up the British escapades in the empire's colonies in Africa, India, the Caribbean, Asia, Australia. Learn about how they treated the indigenous populations in those territories they invaded by military might and claimed as their own: the people, the resources, the profit, and the continued fight against the vestiges of British colonial racism and settler colonialism that those peoples still struggle against today. Heck, just watch the most recent films by Sir Steve McQueen called Small Axe to see how Caribbean and West Indian Black people who immigrated to the UK were treated in that country. And people are surprised that the royal family were concerned about how dark Meghan and Harry's baby Archie would be? Nobody should have been surprised by that. We all should have seen this coming, but we didn't. Because the propaganda around the fairy tale storybook love affair between the commoner and the prince was supposed to hide the dark, racist, classist, evil, and genocidal history of the family Meghan was marrying into. And U.S. media didn't do any better with educating us about that, since they played up the Disney princess narrative as well and ignored the whole settler colonial enslavers and murderers part, which, it's exactly what the U.S. media does with its own history in this country. And I certainly don't expect Oprah Winfrey to point any of this out in her interview with Harry and Meghan either, and neither should you. Thanks to friend of the show, Margaret Kimberly, for reminding me that Oprah Winfrey once disparaged an audience member who questioned the so-called experts she had on her show in 2002 who were claiming that the Iraqi people wanted the U.S. to invade and liberate them from Saddam Hussein, who definitely had a stockpile of chemical weapons and was building nukes as fast as he could. The audience member who had the nerve to question the official line that Oprah was legitimizing on her massive platform just happened to be a young Black woman. And when Oprah dismissed the woman's comments, questioning the so-called experts and whether they were telling the truth or not, the rest of the audience erupted in laughter at the young woman's skepticism. That's the real story behind this royal family scandal for me. That the media is responsible for the propaganda that covers up the generations of sins of imperialism that is once again laughing at all of us all the way to the bank. Now that the Democrats have watered down the COVID relief bill by acquiescing to the stingy whims of the dinos of their party, the Democrats in name only, get ready for the same thing to happen when Biden and Harris's infrastructure bill gets introduced. And from the same people, too. Your friendly undercover Republican, Joe Manchin, dino senator from West Virginia, has already said that he is going to block the infrastructure bill that Biden wants to push forward if more Republicans do not have input on it than they did the COVID relief package. Now, I'm not sure why Manchin wants Republican involvement in the infrastructure spending bill that might be the next big Biden-Harris administration initiative, since the Republicans, the same ones who've been in Congress since during the Trump administration and before, most of them, didn't bother to do anything about infrastructure improvement over the last 4 years. But Manchin says that he simply will not support a bill that does not have the support of those people who didn't do squat about it before. More than that, some Democrats are hoping that the forthcoming infrastructure bill will focus on green energy and reducing tax breaks for energy companies that rely on destructive fossil fuels. Now, this is Senator Ron Wyden's position, who leads the Senate Finance Committee, which has jurisdiction over the nation's tax code. Wyden pointed out that the 44 separate tax breaks that the energy industry currently enjoys is a travesty, considering the damage those fossil fuel companies have caused. And he wants to replace all those tax breaks with just 3. One for clean energy, one for clean transportation fuel, and one for energy efficiency. He said, quote, "I'm telling my Republican colleagues, hey, folks, we always say we should work together to reduce subsidies. That's what I'm talking about. I think we can ignite an enormous array of economic opportunities and high-skill, high-wage jobs in clean energy manufacturing," end quote. But his Republican colleagues won't admit publicly that climate change is real and needs to be addressed through legislative efforts like these. So Joe Manchin is once again going to be on the wrong side of this issue in opposing these efforts. And that would continue to present disastrous realities for people living with dilapidated and crumbling infrastructure in this country. While Manchin courts Republicans and their Stone Age opinions on fossil fuels, communities like those in mostly Black and working class and poor Jackson, Mississippi, are still struggling with a lack of running water in the aftermath of a massive Arctic storm, because funding for upgrading and modernizing the city's water infrastructure is a political and a racial issue, and not one of ensuring everyone has simple human rights. We can do better than this. But Democrats like Joe Manchin and his rich, mostly white Republican friends will keep us from getting there. Follow Luke Mon Nation on patreon.com/LukeMonNation for lots of great content.